Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Mistake Zone, your weekly dose, but not, I guess, bi-weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing?
Yo, I'm doing nice.
Matt, how have you been doing as well?
Yeah. Jared, this whole time I've been nice.
Okay. Matt, I've been not nice because I feel like we need to address the elephant in the room. I'm really bad at posting updates, but we did not have a episode last week, a little hiatus, because unfortunately, Matt Alba, I got hit with that COVID round 2.
Damn.
And, you know, I'm all, well, I guess I'm vaxxed up. So, you know, I don't know what was the waxed and vaxxed, something like that. I'm waxed and vaxxed, so it wasn't as bad as I guess it could have been. But when we got to the time when we would usually record, my throat wasn't in the best shape, Matt, and I didn't want everyone to listen to me sniffling, plus, you know, fatigued and everything. So took a rest, back at it again. And Matt, do I have some mistakes to share with you? But first, I have a tragic tale to tell you, Matt Alba.
Okay, Jared.
And I've been sitting on this one because only save the bangers for the mistake zone.
Jared, I'm scared.
And Matt, so we're at a McDonald's, I think Saturday evening.
Okay.
We're using our... So you know how McDonald's had those loyalty cards on their coffee cups where every 7 coffees you would collect the stickers and get a free coffee. And as we know, PSA, those expire end of December. So,
what?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
They're completely phasing those out. They expire end of December. All digital. Matt, we're here in our bleak dystopian future where everything is an app now. And our physical sticker cards no longer will work at the end of December, so we have to use them. We have to use them to get our medium drinks.
That's sad.
And we're at the McDonald's using our, you know, taken from the stack of our stickers. And it's Teen Central. Matt, of course, when it's the weekend, you're with your teen buds, you go to McDonald's. We were guilty about that growing up, and some things never change. So we're in line, and we're watching a group of teens order their food, and the last one goes up to the counter, Matt. Last teen. He orders 2 McDoubles. And that?
Yeah.
In the year of our Lord, 2023, 2 McDoubles is like $5.65 from what I saw. Matt, this young man, this...
Oh, no.
He only had...
Jared.
A $5 bill, and he was staring at the cashier who was staring blankly back at him. And that, he had to ask him to take out one of those McDoubles.
Oh, no.
And pay with his $5 bill. And that, back in our day, $5 would get us, I believe, 3 McDoubles.
Was it?
I mean, 5, yeah. Well, I think a McDouble when we were growing up in high school was what, $1.39? And then it went up to $1.59, then $1.79, and now a McDouble, a junior chicken. It's all a mess right now, Matt.
Oh, man.
It's all a mess. But as you know, Matt, I love consumerism. I love buying things for me, Matt. We're at the end of Cyber Monday. We're at the end of Black Friday right now. And this weekend is usually me trying to buy presents for everyone.
Samesies.
Matt, I'm bad at buying presents for other people, but I'm real good at buying presents for myself.
Nice.
And that, gotta ask you, did you do any damage to Wallet Kun this Black Friday, Cyber Monday period?
Jaren, Wallet Kun has taken an approximately $600 hit this weekend.
Matt, that's fair. That's fair. That's Black Friday. Matt, you buy that quadruple? No, wait. What's after quadruple?
Quintuple.
All right, Matt. You buy that Ichika of the system?
No, Jaren. I've been a good boy, and I spent that on gifts for people.
Matt, good man, good man.
Uh,
I actually have a question, Matt. What are so in the Mistake Zone Holiday Gift Guide Corner?
mhm.
What are some good general gifts, or just gifts in general, that you are excited to present to said loved one this holiday season?
I think like a good one that I ended up finding is just like one of those, what do you call it, digital photo frames.
Always good,
The
Matt.
ones, yeah.
Unfortunately, I did that last year.
Damn.
Can't do that this year.
Yeah, I got that one that like you kind of just sync to an app. You get, it goes and connects to the internet, and then anybody who like has knowledge of that particular photo frame, they can push like photos to it, which is nice.
Man, I love me a good digital picture frame.
My parents are spending a weekend at like a ski lodge, so I decided to buy them heated vests. So I feel like
Nice.
maybe
Also,
that will
also
help
good.
them.
Also a thoughtful gift. Also good, Matt. And I have one more holiday question for you. Matt, one of the people on my recipient list, took advantage of all the Black Friday deals, got themselves a new PS5.
Was this person you, Jared?
No,
Oh.
I could have. I had, let's say I had plenty of opportunity to do the Shoppers Drug Mart Optium points redemption and get a PS5 for 250 plus tax.
Uh-huh.
But I skipped out on that and just ended up getting like a wireless Xbox headset
True.
for the most part. But so I have a loved one who has a PS5 now. That said loved one, not a lot of time to game. But in terms of Christmas or holidays and giving gifts in general, if you were to buy someone a PS5 game, do you go with? I'll just say it. Should I go with something like those dark picture games, House of Ashes? Maybe throw in a Judgment or a Like a Dragon Ishin, just a bunch of maybe $30 games, or do I just buy the Cyberpunk, Ultimate Edition when it comes out in a few weeks with base game, DLC, and that fine cover art?
I mean,
Not-
Jaren. Uh-huh.
How would you tackle this situation of present giving?
Jared, I think I'm just viewing this from the point of view of what I would want to play.
Yeah,
And I am just like heavily leaning towards the, I think, very solid game of Cyberpunk plus DLC.
Yep. So Matt, you're saying quality over quantity. Not saying that these other titles aren't of quality, but sometimes it's good to do one as opposed to the grab bag of games. Okay, no, I feel that, Matt. Plus, Matt, that box art, that looks real good, real good. You have female V on the cover. We have some Johnny. We have Idris Elba. We have Songbird. Matt, good cast in Cyberpunk. And Matt, speaking about good casts, I think we need to talk about some games for this oh so nice episode.
Yes.
And one game in particular that we were supposed to talk about last week before the COVID tactics got to me. But Matt, Persona 5 Tactica.
Yes.
Matt, should I go for the low-hanging fruit joke?
Yeah, do it up, man.
Matt, this is supposed to be called Persona 5 Tactics, but they hit the wrong key on the keyboard.
Oh, see, Jaren, I thought you were going to go the other way. I thought you were going to go, is it supposed to be called Persona 5 Tactical? And they just missed a letter.
Oh, also a valid goof. Matt, we're stalling right now, but Persona 5 Tactica is the latest, I guess, not necessarily spin-off, but extension of the Persona 5 universe.
Yes.
And this time we have another side story that I believe takes place within the third semester of the overall Persona 5 arc. So this isn't a scramble situation. This isn't kind of being a pseudo sequel, but more so, hey, here's a extended adventure for our Phantom Thieves friends, something similar to the dancing games, the Persona 3 and Persona 5 dancing games. Matt, I haven't finished Persona 5 Tactica, but the way I see most of these Persona 5s or just Persona spin-offs in general, I'm banking on this just being a dream by the end of it. But we can get into story specifics a little later. But Matt, as the resident member of the Mistake Zone with more tactics experience, you have you would you say you're generally a fan of the tactics genre?
I am very much a fan of the tactics genre. I think if I'm playing a game and like it has an option of like doing like, the kind of tactics versus a real time with pause, I always go towards the like tactics style game.
Okay, and Matt, how many hours have you put into Tactica so far?
Jaren, not many. I think I'm only around like in the 10 to 12 range.
Okay, I'm also around I think 8 to 9 ish, so we're relatively in the same place. But I feel like with the time we've put into the game so far, we have had a good. I think at least the introduction tutorial period is over, just because I feel we have most of the mechanics, most of the skill tree, at least visible at this point. So we have a solid grasp of what at least the general gameplay is and some of the early narratives. But
Yes.
again, Matt, based on your experience in the genre, how does Persona 5 Tactica hold up as just a tactical RPG to you?
Jaren, I think that as a purely tactical RPG, it is very weird. Jaren, like, okay, I think overall, just as a whole game, for me, Persona 5 Tactica is something that I think is a good game that I don't like.
Right. I was thinking about this, and I know this episode will continue the Jaren is a boomer hater. Not, I hate boomers, but I am a boomer that hates. And before we get to that, Matt, what about Persona 5 Tactica do you like in terms of what it does mechanically and even through the presentation?
I think the presentation for Persona 5 Tactica is like really, really top notch with regard to like, how much you can get out of. Would you say like this is like the story advancing style is like a light novel? Like I think that's fair to say, right?
If there's one thing I've always come to expect from a Persona 5, like a mainline Persona spin-off, whether it be the arena, whether it be the dancing games, whether it be Tactica now, it's always being presented as a visual novel more so than the social sim dungeon crawler that everyone has kind of come to expect and associate to the mainline Persona games, where at least in a presentation level, Persona 5 Tactica is within that same wheelhouse, but I also feel like it is a more bite-sized, digestible way to kind of get what the mainline Persona games usually present to their players, which is, hey, here's essentially a hub area for you to hang out. You can do all your, equipping your party, doing the Persona Fusion stuff, even though they're all light versions of what is found in a mainline title, it's still enough to get that Persona flavor while being able to push you right into gameplay rather than actually have to deal with, the side stuff, the social link stuff. So it's a bite-sized, I think, Persona experience, which I've come to expect, as I said, from these spin-offs. And I think that's all fine. And I have to say it, Matt, this is such a Steam Deck I wish I was playing this on the Steam Deck. I wish I was playing it on the Switch, even though on the Switch, of course, there is a bit longer loading times from what I've seen. But again, it's a lot more bite size in terms of narrative before you get thrown into each of the the actual mechanics, the actual gameplay, the battles. And that is, I think, a well welcomed contrast to say something like Persona 4 Arena back in the day, when Matt just trying to sit through that story and pressing X through 20, 30 minutes of conversation before you eventually get to a 2-minute battle, which is really daunting. So I think in that regard, that's how I kind of feel about Tactica, and I apologize for completely derailing your thought over there.
No worries, no worries, Jared. But like, yeah, as a presentation piece, I really, really like Persona 5 Tactica. I think, all the sound design is on point. I really like the chibification style that they decided to go for with the characters.
Yes.
It reminds me a lot of Panty and Stocking, and how's the actual title go? And Garter Belt is in there somewhere as well.
Right.
The full title of that.
I don't know the full title, but I know what you're talking about. And
I think that works very well. Jaren, I'm always gonna be a fan when Takahashi Rie is voicing someone in here.
Of course.
And I think that in terms of like gameplay, with regards to like the systems that they use within the like actual tactics battle, this is a very, very good kind of, I don't know if port is, or like maybe it's a very, very good translation of going from Persona 5's like actual battle mechanics over to like Tactica's battle mechanics. I think that is a very good mapping, the way that they've incorporated the basically down system and the all-out attack system into this game. Like, I think it's all very, very well done. But
here it is, Matt. Here it is.
Yes, for me, coming from a tactics, like really like liking tactics, it was very kind of bothersome for me that one, I feel like the party size is like one character too short. There were so many times where I wish it was 4 people instead of 3. And
I was actually surprised that it caps you out at 3, mostly because, in the beginning, for story purposes, it's you, Mona, and Arena. And you would think, oh, when we rescue more of the Phantom Thieves, we'll be able to add more in the party. And again, just by what we're used to in mainline Persona games, a typical party is 4 people. So when they try to explain that, oh, in this situation that's presenting itself, where we're the Rebel Corps and we're taking on Lady Marie's, tyranny, and then her legionnaires, it's better for us to be a group of 3 and sub in when needed, where I do appreciate when they at least have some sort of narrative justification of why the party size is so small. But I agree, where with all the different mechanics that they're incorporating, especially with you trying to set up an all-out attack, I found myself in situations where, I think this would be a lot more satisfying and would lead to a lot more, eureka, aha moments if you were to have that one additional person.
And Jaren, I feel like the fact that this is a tactics game where the playable characters don't really have classes or like to them is like also very hurtful for me, because everybody in essence is a DPS class in here. And for me, that doesn't feel satisfying to really tactics around. The tactics here is really a lot more about pop them out of cover and then triple threat them. And
try to set up that all out attack.
Yes. And that is like another thing that I don't like that got simplified. Because, Jaren, I don't like what they did to the Agi, Bufu, like Garu, where it isn't that enemies have elemental weaknesses anymore. It's more so those are just knocking them out of cover. And then for the most part, you need to do another follow-up attack with somebody else to trigger your one more. And overall, that system just feels very, I don't know, just like not good to me. And because of how much it emphasizes you making these triangles, I feel like a lot of the characters are gimped by the fact that they have low movement. Like, until you get Auto Sukunda or whatever it is, Sukuja,
Yeah.
I think Haru is horrible in this game.
Matt,
Uh huh.
we're gonna get to Haru a little
Uh
later,
huh.
but Matt,
Uh huh.
just the way when I finally got Haru on my team,
Yeah.
and then I saw that she had, I think what's her base
Her base
movement?
movement
It's
is
I think
4.
3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have no reason to use Haru at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Where again, this game is, I think this won't be the first time I say it this episode, Matt, but as your first tactics game, I think Persona 5 Tactica is a good casual entry point into the genre just because it has that Persona 5 flavor. But at the end of, I guess, all the different maps, it is, as you said, that whole gameplay loop. And I know maps, again, I say this lends itself well to being a Steam Deck game, a Switch game, a portable game, just because I feel like the maps are really tight. They're not too long, and really trying to 3-star a map with the additional challenges, which is essentially, defeat all the enemies, don't let any of your party get knocked, and beat it in X amount of turns. Makes, like, these aren't massive epic battles, especially where we're at in the game. I think the most a challenge will ever ask you to do is, hey, beat a map within 8 turns. And even at that, you can probably do it in 3, 4 on average. And there is a variety to the different challenges where, maybe we need to clear all the enemies in this map to proceed, or we need to escape to that other end of the map while fending
Yes.
off enemies, where I do like there is some nice flavor, but again, 8 hours in, it's, I don't have that build diversity that I would kind of want to and expect from not only a tactics game, but a Persona game in general, just because, Matt, I feel like, especially early on the game, Garu and Sai are probably the two strongest moves you can have and put on any of the characters. At no point do I have the need to have Dia or any healing move equipped. And when I look at the massive skill tree, I'm not, looking, should I beef up Ryuji Zio? Should I
Yes.
put a heal, or should I do a upgrade my character's charge? It's, how do I get to the point where I can have an additional move, after a dash, where again, movement is so strong in this game where I'm literally only taking Joker, Mona, and Ryuji into battle because at this point, and then Yusuke, because they all have 7 movements while everyone else has none. Like, and as much as I love Arena as a character, why would I take Arena, especially early in the game, when I can't give her a persona to let me give her a Garu or Sai as well? So it it's a casual introduction to the genre, but as someone who, while I'm not a diehard tactics fan, I still would want kind of more. And maybe that's on me to bumping up the difficulty. But for now, it's, as you said, that gameplay loop of, okay, how do I just circle an enemy to do my all out triple attack? But poo pooing aside, Matt, and anything else that has at least impressed you about Persona 5 Tactica?
Jaren, I remembered it like as you were talking. I really, really wished that the side quest stuff was the
Yeah.
main quest stuff.
Right. I feel like with the side quest stuff, those more so resemble battle puzzles or challenges as opposed
Yeah.
to, what you typically get through the main story.
It reminds me a lot of battle puzzles. Like in particular, when I was doing them, like after you get past, the kind of first 3 or 4 that are very, I don't know, like tutorially and introducing your new party members' abilities ones, they really, really reminded me of like chess puzzles
Yeah.
where, you need to kill everybody in here using like all the barrels, or you need to. Jaren, I had a lot of fun on that. I don't know if you did it, but the kind of early one where you have to take arena from one point of the map to the other in one turn.
Yep.
Jaren,
I really love that
I
one.
really, really like that one. Like those puzzles are all, I think, so good, and I wish that there was more of them to do, because I found that to be the most entertaining part of the game.
Yeah, because as I said, Matt, these aren't massive battles, but
Hmm.
I think the actual battle mechanics really shine when you do have the challenges that restrict you to essentially one or two turn fights.
Hmm.
And again, those were the ones that I was really racking my brain over of, oh, okay, how do I do this in so many turns as opposed to, okay, I have what, 5, 8 turns just to somehow cheese my way. And Matt,
Hmm.
one fight in particular that I wanted to ask you about, do you remember the one where you have to fight, Queen and Fox in that when
Yeah.
you're trying to free them?
Yeah.
And is it just Matt? How did you go about that one mission?
Jaren, I accidentally cheesed that fight.
Yep.
My first way through, I kind of went down the side where Yusuke is,
Yeah.
and Queen and them just trapped themselves like on on a ledge, and they couldn't get to me.
Yeah. When I realized the first time I attempted that map, I went the Queen route.
Uh huh.
And that's essentially you have to break one of the barrels and then go on the above platform. And, I was still feeling it out and I got swarmed pretty bad
Hmm.
and had to reset. The second time that I realized, oh, if you just go down, as you said, the right side, the AI doesn't know how to react to the barrels in their way. Like,
Hmm.
unless they hit a barrel as collateral when they try to attack you, they're just going to be kind of stunned behind those. So I found
Hmm.
that really funny where Queen's just every time it was her turn, she'd just be walking in circles while my whole goal was, okay, I need to stun Fox as fast as I can and start wailing on this
Flag.
flag
Yeah.
for story purposes. And I don't know, as funny as that was in terms of cheese, I thought, oh, this is kind of where the AI limitations are showing itself.
Hmm.
But Matt,
Hmm.
any other aspects of Persona 5 Tactica that you at least found pretty interesting?
I mean, I think that's about it with regards
Okay.
to like Persona 5 Tactica specifically.
Yep.
I mean, I think one thing that I actually like is that you can kind of go back to the previous conversations. I thought that's like a nice touch, and I
Yep.
wish that something like that was in Persona mainline.
That really came into play with one of my favorite, talking moments of the game was when you were discussing, oh, who would make your ideal spouse or significant other?
Uh-huh.
And for you just to kind of go through and see, all your friends in their wedding attire. I do like how Ryuji and Yusuke, um, they also are valid options for you. And it's not really played for goofs about, oh, uh, you're marrying your bros, but I think it was both of them were still pretty genuine. Well, I think they were all pretty genuine while still having a punchline at the end, just
Hmm.
in terms of um, their relationship to one another and not, their actual relationship, which I thought was pretty nice as well.
Hmm.
My only thing about that was, Matt, how
Hmm.
come Arena wasn't an option for Joker? But uh, that aside, you speaking on the relationship aspect of Persona 5 Tactica,
Hmm.
Matt,
Hmm.
as I said, I'm 8 hours in, but as much as I really like the game mechanically,
Hmm.
for the most part, despite how tight it is there, at least as a entry level or entry into the tactics genre,
Hmm.
it still has this issue I have with all the offshoots and spin-offs for the Persona games in general, where Matt,
Hmm.
I made a goof in the beginning where I don't know how this game ends, but chances are it will be some capacity of it was all a dream.
Uh-huh.
Because Matt, let's be honest, Persona Q, dream for the most part. 3-5 dancing, dream for the most part.
Uh-huh.
Where as much as I like how this is as a game, the sick part of my brain makes me feel like, oh, this is just really pointless in the whole Persona 5 narrative,
Yeah.
where I know first and foremost, these should be games, these should be played for enjoyment, but I still can't shake the feeling that it honestly goes against what I feel like the Persona games should represent, to me at least, which are these slightly personalized stories where I'm not sure if you remember this from Persona 5, Matt, but there's one instance when you're in the Velvet Room,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of amplified when you get to see other people and what, or when you pause the game and you get to see what other people have done during that day of the
Uh-huh.
playthrough.
Okay.
It's this notion that these are all the same Persona stories being told in different realities in slightly different ways, told with some level of player agency. And
Mm-hmm.
when I play a Persona offshoot, Persona spin-off, my agency in my game, as a whole isn't there, where my choices in Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royale don't apply to Persona 5 Tactica, which I understand. Again, this is an offshoot. Someone can be going to this for their first time.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, it still shoehorns you into the story that they want to tell, and ultimately that means it has to disregard everything you do in the greater narrative as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
where none of your social links matter, none of your relationships are at play, which, Matt,
Uh-huh.
I know when Futaba said that DLC line that it's supposed to be made as a goof,
Uh-huh.
it's Futaba being meta, but at the same time, it was really off-putting to me where that's exactly what it feels like overall. But I
Jaren,
can
I don't know if like you've heard this as well, but I heard that the DLC for this game is actually kind of important.
really,
Yeah,
because that follows with, that includes Akechi and Kasumi, if I recall correctly.
yeah, it adds characters and apparently it adds like decent narrative to the story, but that could just be hearsay, but that's what I was seeing when I was looking at this
Okay.
game initially.
I'm really curious to see how long Tactica is overall, just because I know there's at least 30 of the side missions, and
Mm-hmm.
even though the Marie story right now, like 8 to 12 hours, is coming to a conclusion, I want to know what the overarching story is, why they're kind of in this new metaverse, and what that all means. So I I would be interested in seeing the DLC, but
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll get to that again a little later because Matt,
Uh-huh.
as I said, I'm a Persona weirdo when it comes to social links and the group dynamics. If if that doesn't apply to you, or if that doesn't mean anything to you, it's nice to see these friends reunite over a foundation of solid tactical gameplay, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Arena is a nice party member and a central character. I like Toshiro and his story of slowly coming into a strategic, confident self. I think that's also been nice to watch as well. But again,
Uh-huh.
it's not.
Uh-huh.
This isn't my first Persona rodeo, and I think Persona 5 came out in 2017, so we're coming up to 7 years since that, Matt. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I've begun to feel some ways when it comes to Persona 5. And before I sound like a totally insane person, Matt, what's the final Matt word for now on Persona 5 Tactica?
Jaren, as someone who hasn't finished this game, Jaren, I think Arena's a persona. Or a shadow somehow related to the what's his face? The the government dude.
Oh,
But
Toshiro?
yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do think that this is a good game. I just think that for me it wasn't l- what I wanted out of a Persona Tactics game.
Right.
And I think the kind of like hype I set up in my mind really caused my feelings towards this game to like be a lot more kind of like iffy with regards to like
Right.
what it actually ended up being.
Fair enough, Matt. Fair enough. And Matt, another question. I know you played some of Persona 5 Royal. Did you play Persona 5 Vanilla, and how much of Royal did you get through?
I honestly, for both of them, played the exact same amount, and it was just basically the month after you recruit Futaba. That's about as far as I
Okay.
got in both of them.
Okay. Matt,
Hmm.
I'm going to give our friends an out right now. Matt, I'll also give you an out if you
Oh,
want.
Jared, I've after I finished like or not finished, but like got to where I got to in those games, I end up
Yeah.
being like, oh, I'm never gonna go back to this. I'm just gonna go read what happens in Persona 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Matt, we can't talk about Persona 5 Tactica without, I feel, at least talking about Persona 5 as a whole, just because I think it's fitting that this episode starts with me surviving COVID round two, just because in kind of many ways, Persona 5 Royal was another pandemic game of mine. And Matt, let's I'm gonna preface the Persona 5 section like this. I think I've mentioned this a few times on the Mistake Zone prior. Um, Matt, it's the notion of someone's golden era. I think this was
Yes.
something we lightly discussed during the Nintendo 64 episode as well.
Yes.
And it's this notion that someone's golden era usually corresponds to, the media you consume during a crucial period where your tastes are being defined. This can be said for a specific title in a genre, a franchise, a series. And it's no shock that for many, Persona 5 sits in that special place. And I would definitely argue of the modern personas, I don't think it's a stretch to say, Matt, would you say Persona 5 is the Final Fantasy 7 of not only the Persona series, but kind of Shin Megami Tensei as a whole?
Uh, I think so. Maybe Jaren. Maybe
Because,
I'm just a
yeah.
Persona 4 apologist, so I want Persona 4 to be the Final Fantasy 7. I want to say that 5 is whatever the PS2 one was.
Okay. Final Fantasy 10.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But I can totally admit that, to me at least, Persona 5 seems like a lot of people's first
Yeah.
JRPG experience. It has become such a big game during a generation's formative years that, Matt, I'll be honest, it will probably always be mentioned as long as we lived. That's why I kind of also put it in line with Final Fantasy VII in being that generation defining JRPG. And Matt, I'm
Yeah.
also one of those casual fans that adores the modern Persona games. While I've tried to play many of the, Shin Megami Tensei entries, I think the Persona mix of the social sim and the turn-based combat really hits that sweet spot for me. But as you said, Matt, I'm a Persona 4 boy.
Yep.
I loved my time with Persona 3, especially with Portable. And honestly, if you were to go through my social media posts, because Saturday Morning Arcade was on hiatus at the time, you can see me saying Persona 5 was my game of the year of 2017, followed by Doki Doki Literature Club, PUBG, Breath of the Wild, and Odyssey. So, not
Yes.
I say Persona 4 is I'm a Persona 4 boy, and I think if you catch me on any given day, I'll probably and ask me, "Hey, what's your favorite game of all time?" I'd probably say Persona 4, to be completely honest.
Okay.
And I say Persona 4 and not Golden because despite the quality of life improvements in Golden, the new story, all the side content, there are aspects of Golden, Matt, that ultimately sour me on the package overall. And again, hater boomer Jaren striking again. In many ways, not only does certain aspects of Persona 5 Royal ultimately make Persona 5 Vanilla my game of choice between the two, but the fact that 3 years after Persona 5 to the 2020 release of Royal, and then 6 years later, since then, Matt, I think the Persona formula badly needs a shakeup. And I say that because I love these games so much, but by the time I finished Persona 5 Royal, I thought it was kind of bursting at the seams. And that's not a you hate to see that from a franchise you really love. But Matt, again, I want to give our friends an out because I don't want someone to subject themselves at an old man yelling at the clouds. But I'll say this, Matt. I'll say this. Matt, I finished Persona 5 on June 11th, 2017 with a playtime of 159 hours and
Yeah.
49 minutes.
Sounds about right.
I finished Persona 5 Royal with a playtime of 208
Oh, that's gross.
hours and 13 minutes. This
many.
was, I think, November 2020.
There's too many, Jaren.
Matt, both runs, I fused a level 99 Alice with a 99 magic stat.
Yep. Sounds about right.
With a moveset of Concentrate, Mudo Boost, Mega Dolian, Almighty Amp, Almighty Boot, Drain Blast, and Spellmaster. Of course, Die for Me. Matt, I bought some DLC so I could make that process a bit smoother. But for people to see if they want to listen to me yell at clouds, here are some of my initial thoughts taken from 2017, Matt. When I went through my journal, aka my conversation with Julian 6 years ago. Matt? Good game, but the story kind of tanks after Shido's dungeon. I like the characters, but I wish they were developed more. The waifu wars are really strong. Akechi sucks, and I wish that they did more friend stuff. And if you don't agree with that, I recommend possibly tuning in next week because of Matt. I think 6 years after and seeing what I think Persona 5 has become in the mainstream, I think I've almost come to oddly... I now have a more mixed relationship with Persona 5 for someone who was so high on it kind of back then. But I think before I start to word vomit, Matt, so you played up to Futaba's dungeon.
Yeah, it's like a third of the way in, I feel.
Yeah, I think a third of the game. Why did you say you kind of fell off both times from Vanilla and Royal? Was it something in particular, or did life get in the way, or was it just not grabbing you compared to, say, Persona 3, Persona 4?
So I think it comes from the way that I play games, which is that I, as a person, just do not like the concept of New Game Plus.
Right.
I just like hate replaying. Hate's a strong word, but like I really don't like replaying games. So when I'm playing when I was playing Persona 5, and also when I was playing Persona 4 and 3, I was doing the runs where you max S-Links the first time through.
Yep.
Which is very grindy, very precise, and not doable without a guide.
Yeah.
And I think just kind of after doing it for 2 games or prior to with like 3 and 4, I was just like not having it for the 5th one. And I I just watched the S-Link conversations on YouTube.
Yeah. Which is fair, Matt. Which is fair. Just because I think when you need to min-max a Persona run, that usually involves you having to, beeline a dungeon the very first day.
Yes.
That given period. And then the remaining, 3-4 weeks is kind of just all... It's not even necessarily story stuff. It's fully dedicated to S-Links, whatever side quests you can do, and kind of beefing up your stats. Where it's hard for me to recommend a min-max run right off the bat, just because I can also acknowledge how that can kind of burn you out, where you're getting so much concentration of the dungeon running all at once, and then so much concentration of the social aspect at once. You have to do them all at once, back to back to back, where that kind of really defeats what I would argue is some of the, what makes Persona game a good experience of trying to balance what you want to do your social life to essentially saving the world. And yeah, by in Royal, I think it was because with me, Matt, I also go the min max route. And I think when Royal came out, I was just kind of excited not to only to re-see these characters once again, but just see all the new content. Something similar to my experience with Golden. But I think you also run into the issue or the risk, which is kind of why I wanted to talk to you about Persona 5 as a whole here, Matt, where you're kind of re-examining the game at that point. And things and chances are you're kind of out of that honeymoon period as well, where you might be able to look at it more critically. And I feel like with my playthrough of Persona 5 Royal, a lot of the things that I semi brushed off in my vanilla run, I made more of a note there. And as the game experience went on, as I went through the Royal stuff, I kind of quickly realized that, oh, maybe as much as I think Persona 5 Royal is the best playing Persona game overall, I think in terms of story and arguably characters, it might not be for me anymore. But I have to say, Matt, one of my biggest gripes with any JRPG or any party RPG in general is the fact that, your entire party runs pretty deep. Usually you're running what, 7, 9, in some cases over 10 people deep. But when you go into actual battle, it's kind of only 4 people at once. Kind of what we were saying back when we were talking about Tactica.
Yeah.
And Matt, I do appreciate just through Persona 5 and Royal that all the different confidants that you have brought in different mechanics and elements into battles. Being able to switch to your party during a fight, the battalion passes. I feel like that's the stuff that makes me really appreciate a party game, where I always have to shout it out when I can. I love the session combos in Tokyo Mirage Sessions because it brings in your entire party, even the NPC party members, which made that game feel like everyone was there during a battle, which I loved. And Persona 5, again, is is the best Persona in terms of general gameplay, combat, and when you get to the Royal, quality of life and presentation. But I think even gameplay wise, once you realize how much they try to casualize the game as well, you can easily exploit it to where non-boss encounter combat is essentially non-existent. This extends from technicals being able to or essentially auto downs, allowing you to really set up your change, to the fact that Ryuji literally gets an instant kill skill where if you're a few levels over a mob, you can just run right through them, get the rewards, get the experience. And I think as a casual game, Persona 5 is really good, but by the second rodeo, I kind of found myself increasing difficulty just to get some sort of challenge from the game, just because some of that quality of life stuff, some of being able to, use your grapple hook to sneak attack enemies, that really made you feel a lot stronger when I feel the story was trying to say, oh, the Phantom Thieves are trying to, just kind of scraping by at some points. And this was before Matt, me being insane, just overgrinded until I was level 99 relatively early into the game. But I digress. Matt, Persona 5 Royal itself, I think there were a lot of smart upgrades and side grades to the base game. Things like the secondhand clothing store, and I think the biggest improvement, in my opinion, was the jazz club. I think each palace also had some different mechanics that made it feel a lot fresher, where I appreciated it. So it just became what nice surprise will I have during my new game plus. But, and I'm sorry, I'm going to drag you into this, Matt, but going through Royal made me realize how much there are certain parts in Persona 5, the Persona 5 narrative that drag so much. I think there are like 3 to 4 moments that instantly stick out to my mind, and re experiencing them in Royal honestly made me really annoyed, which
Okay.
I'll get to in a moment. But just kind of speaking to Royal itself, the extra semester stuff was wild. I'm not sure if you read into that, but I feel like when you get into the extra semester, when you start off the proper royal portion of the narrative, I think it really starts off strong. You get to see human Morgana. You have Futaba mentioning her mom. You have this cafe scene where where the Phantom Thieves all realize that something is wrong, and Yusuke is like, I'd like to believe we all share a genuine connection. And then when you kind of question Ryuji in this scene, he says, oh, how did we even meet? And I think it was at that moment of the royal portion of the game that really brings me back to a feeling I had at the end of Persona 5, where Matt,
Mm-hmm.
as biased Persona 4 boys,
Uh-huh.
I think the investigation team by the end of Persona 4, seemed like better friends compared to the Phantom Thieves, who feel more so like a group with common interests. And with Royal, you essentially get bonus social links with your core party.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing that bummed me out about Royal is I feel like with the bonus social links that you get, from what I recall, most of them are unvoiced, aside from An's bonus social link. Like hers seems fully voiced. And at that point, I feel like they should have put hers last, um, instead of having her as one of the first sets of bonus social links, just because it sets this weird precedent for others to be all, as equally voiced. But I don't know, they weren't. And that made me really disappointed, just because Futaba's reality story in Royal hits pretty hard. And I kind of wished it was voiced just to get that added emotion. But
Mm-hmm.
speaking about voices, Matt, so
Uh-huh.
you played through the beginning of Persona 5 and you were introduced to Igor,
Mm-hmm.
fan favorite, our reoccurring character. And Matt, when you first played Persona 5, what do you remember of hearing Igor's new voice?
Jaren could not tell the difference between him and his old voice.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
because the first time we're introduced to Igor in Persona 5, it is this more gravelly voice, really lower, pitched down. And I think ultimately the reveal towards the end of the game, where the Igor we first meet in Persona 5 was an imposter, I think that reveal was such a highlight for me, mainly due to, again, the meta aspect I brought into it, where for context, Isamu Tano Naka, the Igor voice actor in Persona 3 and 4, unfortunately passed away. And when you're introduced to Igor in Persona 5, he has this completely different voice. And I assumed it was because they simply changed the actor. And I thought, okay, this is completely different than what I'm used to, but that's what the situation is. So when the reveal takes place, I was honestly floored, Matt. And I think I still point to this reveal to be one of the game's highlights for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I think the meat and potatoes I wanted to kind of talk to you about regarding Persona 5, and I guess the Persona series in general, is Matt,
Mm-hmm.
now that we're 5 core or mainline Persona games, countless spin-offs, countless re-releases, how do you ultimately feel about social links and the romance portion of the game?
I like them. Like I think for me, when I'm playing a Persona game, that is
Hmm.
what drives me to play it.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I have tried to go through these games doing full S-Link stuff because I want to experience all of it. But
Yeah.
I think that I very much agree with what you've said. on this particular episode and, in episodes past, where you wish that, or I guess now, like I can say, we both wish that the S-Links interacted with the main story
Mhm.
at all. And like I feel like, with what you were saying before on like the Persona series kind of evolving or changing
Mhm.
and adapting, like I feel like that has to be one of the very first things that has to happen, or should be one
Yeah.
of the very first like steps that should be taken.
And I think going to Persona 5 specifically, I think due to the nature of the game, the story mainly focuses on the villains rather than the Phantom Thieves in many respects. I
Mm.
think the game builds up why you need to go after this person, why you have to change their heart, go into their palace. But with Persona 4, again, here's my bias speaking, Matt.
Hmm.
It was all about the people in your party. Each dungeon was about them and their hidden self. And this kind of was further built through the social links. And
Hmm.
while Persona 4 doesn't stick all its landings, but at least I struck a good balance with its story and, this grand adventure, this, hey, we need to kill a god as per any Persona game, but it's still
Uh-huh.
balanced well with actual high school student aspects. And you can argue that Persona 5 is thematically more similar to Persona 3 on how they handle their interpersonal relationships in a group with a common goal. But I think overall, my issue is that Persona 5 pushes the idea that the Phantom Thieves are this ride and die group, but ultimately by the end of the game, we don't see that same, level of friendship that I kind of expected, that Persona 4 kind of established for me and
Hmm.
I came to expect out of Persona 5, where I think this is made worse in Persona 5 Royal since again you have a whole new semester, but the extra days the game presents to you, everyone is kind of out doing their own thing. And I get this is primarily due to the narrative being told and they're dealing with their ideal dreams coming true.
Hmm.
But it kind of continues to emphasize how they're just kind of a group of people coming together for their anti establishment cause, but don't really have many opportunities just to be friends. Where what I do appreciate in Persona 4 Golden is a lot of the story stuff they added was these slice of life moments to kind of create bonds. And honestly, Matt pushed Marie as a character, which I won't get into. Um, but you had so much instances in Golden for them just to be friends, for them just to be high school students, where I think throughout the Royal extra semester, it's nope, story's still foot on the pedal going at 100 where
Hmm.
Matt,
Hmm.
I think the conflict so in Royal the conflict revolves around the ideal realities for each party member, but in turn it shows why romancing a party member doesn't really mean anything. I don't know about you, Matt, but I romanced Futaba my first time around, and then I romanced Haru during my Royal run.
Hmm.
And that means my Joker's girlfriend was someone within the party.
Hmm.
And the fact that, your girlfriend can essentially disappear and Joker doesn't play into their ideal fantasy life, this reality, this ultimate reality that's bestowed upon them.
Hmm.
I feel like maybe that's me being a hopeless romantic, but just the fact that, oh, we have this relationship, but it's not going to play out in any ideal reality. I think that really got to me, where the romance portions have always been fan service, but aspects of Royal really drove home that they kind of mean nothing to the overall narrative.
Hmm.
And as someone who chose Haru during Royal, I think you can argue that her ideal reality won't necessarily involve Joker um, as them being in a relationship, given how Royal kind of plays out. But I think that's also a reach, and I'll kind of get into that later. But again, I think the one saving grace was the jazz club that the brought into Persona 5 Royal and was
Hmm.
a quality of life change that I love where you're able to invite one member out for a jazz club date, talk to them a bit, and then they'll learn a new Persona skill. I think it was such a welcome addition to me since it allowed you to actually continue to have a relationship with your party or to have a relationship with party members other than, throwing them away when you hit max S rank with them, which to be honest, Matt, once you do hit 10 with someone, you pretty much have no reason to interact with them anymore.
Yeah.
Where the social link system overall is great. Is one of the defining things about Persona, but as you said, my number one wish for future Personas is that these relationships are more dynamic, that they
Hmm.
actually played into the story and they actually interweave with one another. Where I don't know, Matt, if your romance option was in your party from a narrative perspective, you would think that that would play some sort of role, have some, visual cues.
Hmm.
I think it's weird because in like Persona 4 Golden, they did try to integrate at least your significant other a couple of times. You would think that they would expand upon that within Persona 5, but they kind of just drop it, which was unfortunate. But Matt,
Hmm.
imagine if you rejected one of your party members and then openly told the group that you were dating another one. Like, what if that shifted S? Remember how you can lose um, S ranks in Persona 3?
Hmm.
Like, what if there was a way to not necessarily lose a S rank, but kind of shift it in a way
Oh
to
man.
how they kind of react to you, how they react to another party member? Or, Matt,
Hmm.
I know you run the risk of breaking your um, daily. So, again, Persona revolves around, hey, what do you choose to do in a given day? What do you do in the afternoon, the evening? And your choices ultimately matter. But Matt,
Hmm.
I know you run the risk of breaking this daily formula, and this further dilutes the pool of choosing the right thing to do during your limited time and your min max runs. But one aspect that I adored in Cyberpunk was your romance and your key friends just randomly texted you just to see what was
Yes.
up.
Hmm.
And then you being able to reply and hold a slight conversation. I feel like that added so much flavor to the world. And I think if you were to really, since the smartphone and texting was such a big thing in Persona 5, I feel like this would also allow you to continue to play off established relationships while still giving you the choice of trying what to do on that day. Where I don't know. I feel like in a post cyberpunk world, gaming world for me, like I want them to kind of just find other fun ways for you to interact with characters
Yeah.
that you otherwise don't need to interact with anymore because that further pushes the bond of a character. Where
Hmm.
what if during the instances where you can buff up your stats, you could choose to bring along someone where, hey, maybe I can do this by myself, or I can invite a friend for me to tackle the burger challenge, or to study, or to build a Gundam model. And I think there are other ways that they could have incorporated the Phantom Thieves just to make it actually look like they're friends. But I don't know. Ultimately, by the end of it, they kind of don't. And I think that's where Persona 5 ultimately drops the ball with me,
Yeah.
where not
Uh huh.
I think since you played, I think one third of the Persona 5 and then Royal as well, there are a few characters that I wanted just to get your take on. Matt,
Hmm.
what did you think of the best boy, not best boy, the best bud character of the game in Ryuji?
I mean, I generally liked him. Like he seemed like a good, like kind of like a good, not knowledge dumpy character, but
Yeah.
kind of that. Hey, we need to dump information, and you're gonna be the conduit that's either coming from or why it's getting like told to us.
Right.
And like generally, I liked him. Like he was pretty cool.
Matt, he said for real a lot, which I really like.
Hmm. Hmm.
But Matt,
Hmm.
if I had to be a Debbie Downer right
Uh
now, I
huh.
think Ryuji is one of the characters that suffers the most from social links not tying into the overall narrative,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
since he's one of the first S links you can max really early into the game,
Yeah.
where to me, I think the game does him dirty in service of comedy, where his growth kind of keeps being pulled back just to kind of progress the narrative. Where so by S-Link 10, you see how Ryuji comes to term with, the idea of labels and how, you being labeled can really affect a person. And honestly, Matt, S-Link 10 Ryuji goes against the Ryuji that's a Dicta Morgana, but you kind of need Ryuji to be a Dicta Morgana in order to ultimately drive the plot forward.
Mm-hmm.
Where at the end, I forget, at the end of Shido's Palace, you can't make, you also can't make Ryuji this selfless and competent character that saves your entire group and then use him for a punching bag the next scene, where
Uh-huh.
I get mildly ribbing your friends, but honestly, the Mona versus Ryuji relationship gets really toxic. And even after their resolution, they're still pretty toxic to one another, which again goes against to the growth Ryuji gets through from his social links. Where I would, I know if Ryuji being the same Ryuji in the social links played into the story, we probably wouldn't get Haru. But at the same time, it's that disconnect that I really see with him. But that another early game character. What did you think of Anne?
Jaren, I thought they like. I kind of get that it's like kind of the whole point of what's it, the first dungeon, and like her as a character. But
Yep.
I kind of just didn't really like the whole sexualization of Anne at the start,
Hmm.
and I don't know, like overall, just kind of didn't really like the character in general.
Yeah, Matt, I think this is going to get thorny, but I
Yeah.
also think Anne's presence in this story is weird, while also I think she has one of the worst social links in the game. I think, in terms of the overall narrative, Anne is first presented as this tragic character that
Mm-hmm.
is dealing with a predator. She's trying to stop his advances while also being placed in a dilemma to save her only real friend at Shujin Academy. And I think all these elements come together to make a strong impact for the first dungeon. But once that weight is taken off her shoulders, it's almost like they neuter her as a character,
Mm-hmm.
where she's played to be more naive at points. And honestly, for a character who dealt with, Kamoshida and this story of abuse, they're also real quick to put her in a situation where, oh, you need to get naked in front of this random boy. And it's
Yeah.
also played for laughs,
Uh-huh.
which was also jarring to me. Then that you have her social link, which again explores her trying to find out what it really means to be a hero.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of ultimately boils down to her being a young model that's naturally gifted, who succeeds without really trying. So
Yeah.
she should probably try to be more authentic. Where I don't know, I didn't get much of growth from on during her social link, but just overall, I also just didn't feel that she made, after the first dungeon, I feel like she doesn't make an impact the rest of the game, which I also found kind of unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, I think I can go on about each of the different characters, but I know I'm holding you for a long time now, Matt. But there are some aspects about Persona 5 that I apologize, but I have to get off my chest, Matt.
Okay.
Where I kind of alluded to this earlier, but there are three instances specifically that come to mind that are really long stretches of story that don't give you any, save breaks. And I'm
Okay.
talking about the space state, or not only that, but I think these moments in the game in particular just drag on for a really long time. And that's the space station arc, the Akechi Con, and post Shido's cruise dungeon, where I think parts of these moments drag on so much. They're really convoluted for their own good and honestly feel like lazily written. Then again, I think that might be the fact that they're forcing you to watch something that's an hour and a half, 2 hours after, substantial gameplay,
Mm-hmm.
where I think you just don't care anymore. And the fact that these story bombs happen 2 to 3 times is really wild to me. Where I know you didn't play it firsthand, Matt, but I think the Space Station of Greed, which is Haru's dad's dungeon, I
Mm-hmm.
think this is one of the first instances where the game stumbles. Um, Mostly just because of Haru's dad as a character, the sub story of Morgana, and the spaceport dungeon itself. It's during this time where the popularity of the Phantom theme seems to go to their heads. They feel like they need to capitalize on this and they need to change a heart just so they continue to win favor within the populace.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is in between Morgana leaving the Phantom Thieves just because of his bickering with Ryuji. And then we get introduced to Haru's engagement situation. Um, I think just overall, all the character motivations seem off and there's too much going on. Again, I had Ryuji social rank 10 at this point, where why is Ryuji going at Mona like this, considering how much, he's grown in his own social links? But this is in between a dungeon that drags on. It has a mechanically dense boss fight that somehow gets even more frustrating and royal, where even, not, me, I overgrinded like crazy, but
Mm-hmm.
having enemies that flee within like 2 turns
Uh-huh.
and not allowing you to do all out attacks makes it just feel so ridiculous. And I also go back to the fact that Mona shits on Ryuji the entire game. Then he gets mad when Ryuji finally shoots back at him. And then the group expects Ryuji to apologize. Like, I don't know, Matt. Like, it's a weird dynamic between all the characters at this point. And I thought this is where, as a narrative, it just begins to really feel shaky. And I could have really used some sort of side story, again, to make them feel like they were actually friends. But Matt, from your
Mm-hmm.
time of reading into Persona 5, what did you think of Makoto's sister Sai and then how her S-Link is presented?
Jen, I didn't really read too far into hers, to be honest, so I don't really
Okay.
have an answer for you there.
So Sai is essentially, I think her S-Link technically is the narrative wrapper for
Mm-hmm.
2/3 of the game,
Mm-hmm.
half of the game with Royale, where you as Joker are being interrogated by Sai and kind of telling her everything that's happened to the point of him being captured from when he first gets to Tokyo.
Mm-hmm.
And the portion of the game where you max Sai's S-Link, and this is combined with the Akechi Con and after her dungeon overall, I think this is the lowest point of the game, where I think Sai's social link is confusing and this weird narrative wrapper. I don't like the notion that your social link for her. So, from a narrative perspective, you're telling Sai everything that's happened in the fall of the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
But when you max out her social link, it's giving you benefits that benefit you, gameplay wise
Yeah.
earlier in the year when you haven't met Sai yet. Like, I know it's all for gameplay purposes, but just as from a narrative perspective, I thought that was really off-putting to me. And I know we're gonna get to the weeds here, but so with Persona 5, the whole thing for the Phantom Thieves is they go into someone's dungeon, they steal whatever represents their heart in order to
Mm-hmm.
change it in the
Mm-hmm.
real world. But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
you don't actually change Sai's heart in the palace. Like, it even makes less sense in context because you're not actually spending 80 hours telling her this story, telling her the overall narrative. You basically change this random lady's mind. And since she had a strong enough desire or whatever to make a palace, you essentially just change her mind within an hour, as opposed to going through after failing the rigmarole of just going to a palace, which is also kind of weird when you think about it. But again, Matt, the Psy interrogation and maxing her S-Link is so weird, where she has this tonal shift in the middle of it, where she goes from being this hard pressed cop to being somewhat sympathetic at the flip of the switch. And then it's the fact that the game implies so much that, everyone's favorite Akechi is going to sell you out. But for some reason, Joker can't tell her his name. Sai immediately goes, "Oh my God, you're referring to him, aren't you?" And then she immediately goes along with the Phantom Thieves' plans, where it's almost too convenient at this point, where it just feels like this Deus Ex Machina. And again, I understand the implication at this moment is that Sai's change of heart is in full effect, even though they didn't technically change her heart according to the rules of the game. But I think this section in particular feels like they try to write themselves out of corners that they wrote themselves in just a few sentences prior to. And this leads me to, I think, the worst thing I find about this game, Matt, which, do you remember anything about the Akechi Con and how they kind of fleece him into killing Joker?
No, not at all.
So, Matt, I think the big twist of Persona 5 is, Joker and the Phantom Thieves get caught. Akechi, being the young prince detective, he kills Joker, and everyone thinks, oh no, it's all over for us. But you find out, nope, that was our plan all along. Akechi actually kills a shadow version of Joker, even though he doesn't realize he's in the metaverse. And now we are going to flip the script on him and reveal to the world that the Phantom Thieves are still at it. They're still changing hearts for the good of people. And Matt, replaying through Persona 5 Royal and going through this Akechi Con once again, it reaffirms how convoluted it is and how, to me anyway, it does the overall narrative such a disservice where, as I said, this is the part where Akechi betrays the Phantom Thieves, Joker is caught, is forced to interrogation, and Akechi ultimately kills him, covering it up as a suicide. But it's revealed that this is an elaborate plot by the Phantom Thieves to trick Akechi and fool him to killing Joker inside the metaverse under the guise that Sai had a change of heart. Despite, narratively, it implies that Akechi has always been watching the Phantom Thieves in the previous dungeons, and he knows how a change of heart takes place. But he should also know that they didn't actually steal anything of Sage. They didn't steal his treasure. So I'm going to stop hanging on that point. But I'll return to this point a lot, Matt. But when this whole story segment is told, after a dungeon in a hour and a half information dump, that's so elaborate that when you finally get control and you're finally able to save in your room, Futaba's just hanging out there and you can talk to her and she'll essentially just give you another 15-minute recap of what the hell just happened. Where, I'm sorry, Matt, that's not good writing. That's too much all at once. And I don't know, just seeing Futaba in Joker's room and then pressing through X just to see, oh my God, are they actually just going to re-explain what just happened to me? I don't know, Matt. Like, the twist of, hey, Akechi kills Joker, but that was all according to the Phantom Thieves' plan. I think my problem is that twist only works by ultimately lying to the player, where I get that they're trying to justify it as Joker is so drugged up during this interrogation with Sai that he forgets parts of the story. But it's kind of so too convenient that the only parts he forgets are the ones that reveal the twist to the player. Like, you pretty much play the game 1-to-1, you know, except for the forced jumbled parts, which on paper you're supposed to say, oh, that's so clever when it's revealed to you. But I mean, he remembers when he plays the crane game. He remembers what juice he drank on the Sunday. He remembers the random conversation he overhears on the street. But, you know, the things that are literally life and death are forgotten, where again, it's this how the game is played really contrasts and conflicts with the story they're trying to tell. And I don't know, Matt, it just feels cheap and lazy considering how the overall package is portrayed, to the point that the player can actually make wrong choices that lead to a bad ending. But by withholding information, a player can't make an educated deduction, and you just have to hope that the player decides not to sell out their friends at this point. And I understand that it heavily funnels you not to sell out your friends, but and of course it's pretty much expected 99% of people won't pick selling out their friends, but I don't know, Matt, it's just a cardinal rule of compelling mystery or intrigue. You can't lie or withhold information from the audience if you're also expecting them to be able to figure out it on their own. And if you do, you know, you're just asking your player to make assumptions. And I think this exchange, and when they're explaining how the twist works, how the con works, I feel like Sojiro is the only reasonable one asking, so where's the body if they killed a fake Joker? And this is, you know, it's revealed that, oh, Akechi has some serious pull where he just faked a death certificate. And Sai tells all her police friends, oh, you know, someone else has the where Matt, they literally gloss over how they explain what they do with the body and just say, hey, it all worked out in the end. And it just got to me where neither Akechi or his dad thought that it would be imperative to make sure that, you know, your one obstacle is truly dead. And I don't know, Matt, like this whole portion of the game just dragged on too long. It was so convoluted, and it really rests on trying to say, hey, isn't this so clever? But at the end, I don't know. I was just really annoyed here that after a substantial boss fight, I was subjected to 2 hours of cinematics and story information. But again, I feel like it's strange because I feel like narratively the game has to be this bloated due to the nature of the Akechi Con as a whole, where the game has to lie and hide key information from the player. And that means it has to retroactively go back and show you the foundation, the groundwork, and why you should be shocked how this elaborate plan unfolds. Where the Persona 4 story overall, it was an investigation, so the foundation was built along the way. But the game Persona 5 wants to present a twist where it's the protagonists have always been on top. And while I understand the concept, it's weird that they made an active decision to hide that from the player, where I think it would have been a lot better to see them in real time trying to outsmart Akechi based on the player's actions, so your choices actually mattered, as opposed to, oh, hey, this was going on in the background and we're gonna reveal that it has been going on the whole time. But I don't know, Matt, this was the most heavy-handed portion of the game, an hour and a half of story, and Futaba telling you, hey, this is what actually went down. But I honestly think by the end of the Akechi Con, I thought I was, especially with Royal, Matt, I wasn't down with it anymore. I wasn't down with it. And there are two more characters that I want to go through with you.
Okay.
The first one being the boy of the hour, Matt. What do you think of Akechi overall?
I mean, Akechi, I never really liked as a character.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't do a good, or maybe they did do a good job, depending on like what they were trying to go for. But they
Yeah.
never, for me, did a good job of making him likable or not
Yeah.
suspicious. And I don't know if that's like a good thing or not with regards to
Mhm.
this character.
Man, I feel like Akechi is built up to be this intelligent foil to the Phantom Thieves who's as cunning as he is charismatic, how he's supposed to be one step ahead of everyone and is always ruthless. But Matt, in Royal, Akechi is given so much more screen time in a way to better humanize him. Joker is given a handful of instances to speak about their bond, why, they have, or at least why they're always going to be connected. And, this ultimately leads to Joker apparently having such a forced, deep connection with him. And I also feel like this is a symptom of the writers letting the fan base influence the game. For Matt,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of go into one aspect of Persona 5 Royal that will kind of, you know, preface what I'm about to say about Akechi and then ultimately Haru afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
where in Royal, near the end of the game, um, the mental health teacher, Maruki, he reveals that the reason Akechi has come back is because of Joker's wish to save him. Producer Kazuhisa Wada and director Daki Ito intentionally made it so that Akechi's survival depended on the player's choices in the game. And I think when you frame it where the reason why Akechi comes back is because of Joker. So with that in mind, as someone who never felt that connection with Akechi and never really bought into all the times he was kind of written into the story, I'm kind of floored at the idea that what is the reason, in what context would Joker even care about Akechi so much to bring him back over his real friends, over his potential lover, when they're all going through their own things? And I understand that, oh, of course, Akechi's dead, everyone else is alive. I think that's narrative enough based on Joker's character. But there are also instances where Akechi says that he'll turn himself in once they're through, but he doesn't even try to really make amends with all the people he has wronged, especially with the Phantom Thieves themselves. By the end of Royal, he's kind of just walking around and never really bothering to show his face again, even when Joker is in jail, even though he's supposed to have this last minute reform. And don't get me wrong, Matt, I appreciate when a tragic villain redemption is pulled off properly, where despite their vile deeds, we get enough characterization to get invested in their journey. I don't think Akechi accomplishes any of that, especially in the base game where his last act of kindness after he essentially tries to kill you all is their last ditch attempt of, hey, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all.
Oh.
Maybe it's biased, but I think every time they try to bring him back, it really feels forced. And Joker's written in a way where the game kind of just begs you to accept Akechi. And I don't know, Matt, where there's so many aspects that and relationships that this game can explore for Joker, but they still keep going back to Akechi, which really puts a weird taste in my mouth because this brings us to the last character I wanted to ask you about, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
we mentioned her before, but what do you think of Haru in the game?
Jaren never got to Haru as a
Mhm.
playable character, so I never really became invested in her as a character.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I think of all the characters in Persona 5, Haru is the one who's done the most dirty in the game. And honestly, the implications of romancing her are borderline cruel, where Haru is introduced too late into the game. during an arc that is super convoluted and pretty much when the Phantom Thieves are at their worst. She's legit introduced as Mona's sidekick after the whole Mona and Ryuji ordeal. Her story revolves around being complacent, used as a political pawn for her father, forced into an engagement, and having to accept everything. And then, again, Matt, we have in Persona Royal Joker's wish to bring back Akechi. But in retrospect, Matt, as someone who romanced Haru, how doesn't Haru break up with Joker afterwards? Like, so Matt, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Akechi is the reason why Haru's dad is dead. Akechi is also the reason why Futaba's mom is dead. Where, I don't know, Joker not being in Haru's fantasy world, if they're in a relationship, makes sense just because Joker kind of sucks to her. And honestly, I still don't know how you rate her to be okay with the fact that everyone puts up with Akechi, even after he's no longer useful and the twist is revealed. Where, sure, she makes a few offhanded remarks, but ultimately she goes with the flow because she has to. She's still essentially in another she's escaped the cage of her father and her fiance to be put into this weird cage in the Phantom Thieves where she just has to deal with, hey, the person who murdered my dad is now our comrade. And I don't know, Matt, they should have at least tried to address that. Like, make it where if you choose Akechi or you bring him back, Haru leaves or something, anything. Like, Haru is portrayed to be the somewhat sadistic character. I wish they gave her a few more jabs. But I do appreciate that towards the end of Royale, when they're all kind of mourning Akechi, she doesn't say anything, which I thought was like really well done. But again, I go back to Joker's wish, and I'm almost done, that I promise. But I like that even though they try to, or at least attempt to flesh out Akechi more in Royal, but I feel like resources should have been put elsewhere and then he should have stayed dead, as cruel as that sounds. But if you needed Joker to make a wish in these ideal realities, then how about Joker wishes in Maruyuki's world that he doesn't have to move away anymore, since that actually connects to the Phantom Thieves, which are supposed to be, his real friends. Where, Matt, I'm not sure if you remember this from the Persona 4 anime, but I feel like that anime did a better job at characterizing the player's feelings by making you Shadow his insecurities about having to move forward without his friends. And I don't know, Matt, like by the end of Royal and how they handled everyone's ideal reality and Joker's wish, that as someone who's, as I said, purely anti-Akechi, that left a really bad taste in my mouth. But if there's one thing I have to give it to Royal, Matt, and I kind of wish you experienced, it is the final Maruki fight, where, Matt, I have to admit, the final boss of Royal and the encounter with Maruki at the end is anime as fuck. And I say this because, Matt, I thought the game peaked when all my friends literally stopped a god hand from an actual god. And then I, as Joker, used a grappling hook to get on top of said god and shoot it in the face. But that, after all the Persona hijinks, happens, after you shoot a god in the face, you end up in the rubble of the aftermath. And it puts you in a turn-based fight with Maruki. And none of you have your personas. None of you have your special powers. Matt, it's essentially a turn-based fist fight.
Nice.
And moving forward, all Persona games need to have a non-Persona fight. Where, Matt, remember in Persona 4 with Charlie or Yu's and Yosuke's S.Link where they fight in the riverbed? Matt?
Mm-hmm.
What if that was turn-based? Where, I don't know about you, Matt, but fist fight on top of a structure because both characters are too tired to fight normally is one of my favorite tropes in any media.
Oh man, Jaren, I'm just thinking about the time that you had to like fist fight the Pope in whichever Assassin's Creed that was.
I think that was the first one, Matt.
Oh
So
man.
good. But, Matt, I've
Uh-huh.
been ranting to you like a madman for the past hour on this, but I have one more thing I need to rant about, and I
Okay.
promise I'll never talk about Persona again. And that,
Mm-hmm.
do you know how Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal end? Like the final shots, do you know how they end?
No, I do not.
Okay. So in vanilla Persona 5, it ends in, for some reason, everyone gets into a van because they're being chased randomly. I forget why they're being chased, but essentially, it's all the Phantom Thieves. The game ends with everyone in the van, and the Phantom Thieves go on one last summer road trip to drop off Joker in his hometown.
Uh-huh.
And Persona 5, with the extra semester and the ending, it plays out a lot different because essentially, at the end of Persona 5 Royale, um, everyone kind of reveals that, oh, we're gonna all go our separate ways. I think Ryuji's moving away. I think An's going abroad. Everyone's going to different schools. You know, Haru and Makoto are graduating. And Matt,
Mm-hmm.
the instead of going on one last road trip with your friends, all your friends drop you off at the station. They don't actually see you off on the train like they did in Persona 4. You have a short exchange with Kasumi, who I'm not even going to get to because this would add another like half an hour to the pod, Matt. But we also have one last implication that Akechi is still alive because, you know, he, at least someone that looks like him, walks by the train as Joker is off in thought or something.
Uh-huh.
And it's such a contrast to how vanilla ended because, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I hated how Persona 5 Royal ended. Um, while a lot of Royal content is textbook Persona, it further, again, Matt, highlights how social links, romances, they don't tie into the actual story, and all your personal choices don't actually matter. Like, I'd argue that the ending events of Royale are more true to life, or a more true to life take on having to move forward on your own. That this is a coming of age scenario that we've all faced. And I think that in that regard, it represents it well. It's just so jarring to have Persona 5 end on everyone has to leave and go their own way for a game that literally revolves around the bonds you create. They seem like they're all indifferent to one another by the end. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
don't get enough social events throughout the game, so the Phantom Thieves never really feel like close friends most of the time. They're just a group with a common interest, and now that common interest has isn't there, there's like no point in sticking around anymore. And in turn, I especially feel bad for Futaba because in this context of the royal ending, this is her first and only support system. And they're all kind of leaving her, where at least in vanilla, Anne and Ryuji are technically still there. They're going to be third years if they go to Shujin, where
Mm-hmm.
she would be going in the fall. And I don't know, Matt. I feel like it's also weird that towards the end of the game, everyone admits all their plans of kind of moving away, but it also kind of feels like if Ryuji didn't kickstart this conversation, they all would have told each other even later, if that makes sense. But I don't know, Matt. I can see how some people might like it, as it is. I don't want to say it's a bit more realistic, but people move away. That's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also hate the idea that the royal ending is considered this mature and neutral way, but the vanilla ending with everyone going off into the sunset for one last road trip is oddly pandering and too fan servicey when, Matt, I'm just going
Mm-hmm.
to say this. Akechi existing in Persona 5 Royal is literally the definition of pandering and fan service. So I think that was like the ultimate bow on top of Persona 5 is no longer for me, where maybe it's because I'm too caught up on that Persona 4 high, where chances are if I were to go back to it now, there's a chance that I might not hold it in the same high regard that I do. But replaying through playing through Persona 5 and then replaying it through Royal just made me think, Matt, there's a lot of shortcomings here where mechanically it's a great game, but just like a me talking about Persona 5's narrative, it overstays its welcome, Matt. It's too long, too jarring, and I'll be honest, Matt, no no proper exchanges between friends, which I also apologize for. But I think that's ultimately my feelings on Persona 5 and Royal, and how when I was playing through Tactica, this is all in the back of my head, where when you said, hey, you should probably play the DLC, apparently because it introduces Akechi, it introduces Kasumi, and it really has some strong story implications. I think, Matt, I'm not going to play that DLC because I don't like Akechi, and I don't like how he's kind of been forced down people's throats. And likewise, I think I'm done forcing my views on Persona 5 down our listeners' ears. And Matt, I ask you, are you excited about Persona 6?
Jaren, I legitimately am not. I think that I am not going to be playing Persona 6 unless they do show something that just looks wildly, maybe not wildly different, but like very much improved on the system or something like that.
Yeah.
For when it comes out.
Where, Matt, I just want my Persona pals to be Persona pals. And hopefully those Persona pals don't kill the parents of their other Persona pals, and other Persona pals don't just stand idly there and accept it. And that's my biggest hope for Persona 6. And that,
Jaren?
I think it's time to also go on a road trip to Joker's hometown, because this was a beefy boy return. Matt, what's on the docket for next week, since we're never going to talk about Persona ever again?
Jaren, we've hit episode 69, nice.
Yes.
Of season 5. So, it's time to put a close on season 5.
Okay.
Start season 6. And, Jaren, maybe we'll bring some new stuff to the Mistake Zone next week.
Okay. That. Hold this to me. I think next week I'm going to talk about Knuckle Sandwich.
Okay.
I think I'm going to... Matt, are you going to play through Jusant? Or did you play through Jusant?
I don't think I'm going to play through Jusant. Jaren,
Okay.
I think I know what I'm going to bring next week. And
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's gonna be Jaren, it's gonna be a new thing. Maybe I'll make it a more regular thing for
all right.
season 6.
If you need me to prep, let me know. Let me know.
No prepping, Jaren. This is I'm just yeah.
Okay. And to the handful of listeners who stuck with me through my Persona rant right there, I thank you. But as always, I gotta thank my friend Matt Alba for joining me this week and editing the Sweet Pod.
Jaren, I gotta thank you for diving deep into this Persona 5 rabbit hole. Apparently, you have a lot of problems with.
Matt, I completely skipped over how I think they did Kasumi also pretty dirty in the ending, but we'll leave that to the imaginations, just like everyone's ideal reality of me never talking about Persona 5 ever again.
Jaren, what color do you want Persona 6 to be?
Blue. Sorry, 3 was blue, 4 was yellow, 5 was red. Honestly, I think green makes the most sense, but I honestly wouldn't mind a purple at this point.
Yes, I specifically want a darker green.
Yeah,
as the
a
next
dark green
Persona.
would be really nice. It would be really nice. But Matt, gotta think Arena. Matt, I like Arena. Arena's a good character, I think.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Persona 5 Arena or something.
Oh, man, Matt, I want to thank the Persona 5, the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax cover, because Matt, that's probably the best
God.
cover in Persona history.
I really like looking at that cover as I got it from Best Buy, getting the pre-order bonus of the Persona cards, and then returning that game.
I also did that too, Matt, because I'm also a terrible person. I want to thank the introduction movie to Persona 4, Dancing All Night, Matt.
Yes.
And I want to thank the investigation team, just because Persona 4, Dancing All Night is literally canon. It's literally the sequel to Persona 4. And it's literally the story of Rise, a popular idol, asking her high school friends to back her up at a concert. And that's a level of friendship that the Phantom Thieves couldn't even come to in their ideal realities. And that's why I think Persona 4 is the greatest game of all time.
Jared, you know what? They don't even need to make Persona 6, Jared. Where's Persona 4.2?
Oh, man. Matt? And with that, I think that's this mistake zone. And Matt, I'm going to say this.
Okay.
I think Akechi Truther should be put in prison, and I think Marie Truther should also be put in prison.
Oh.
Matt, I hate Akechi.
Yeah, I'm not fond of him either.
But Matt, that was a beefy Persona episode, and I thank you again. But please, Matt, take it away.
This has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of Season 5.